This computer. All right, Sev, where are we at? Are we at 8? This is 8?
I believe 9.
Hey, 2.01, baby. I don't really know how to count to 10. But, all right, so today let's talk about something I think that older and younger coaches sort of need to know about and be familiar with is mentoring and the importance of it. Like, look, you and I have been through the ringer. We've been through up and down with the coaching, and I think we're both pretty solid in the people that mentored us and, sort of showed us the ropes. And I want to get your take as far as like the importance of the mentorship as far as being a mentor and then being the person who's being taught by the mentor. I think we should go through that. Is that mentee?
I don't know. I'd have to run it by my wife.
Mentoree, yeah.
Might be the mentee.
Can't Google it or Siri this thing, so don't worry about it. So talk to me about the mentorship, like how important you think it is, especially in today's game with so many young coaches in the game today.
Yeah, they have to, especially young coaches, when we're talking about coaches that are probably like from 22 to 35 years old, who really are kind of trying to climb the ladder and move up in the coaching ranks. It's really important that they have, and I think 2 to 3 people that they can go to that can really help them along their career path. And the thing that I've found is it doesn't have to be somebody with a basketball background. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it is. Like I know mine and yours probably did, but there was a couple of people in my life that didn't know anything about basketball. So you have to find out who those 2 or 3 people are as you're a young coach, and really kind of let them help you as you kind of navigate this coaching ladder that you're trying to climb. And it doesn't have to be a person with a basketball background. Usually is, mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be. And now the question is, well, how do I find those guys?
Right.
And that's something that each coach has to kind of figure it out. I didn't. My first real mentor in my life was I was in the 3rd grade.
Oh wow.
Okay, it had nothing to do with basketball, but this person, believe it or not, Sweet Chuck, you're going to laugh at this, but my first mentor in life, besides your parent, mm-hmm. Okay, was my piano teacher. Yeah, and she taught me from the 3rd grade through the 12th grade, and she was a great mentor for me, not just from the musical side of things. I'm kind of a piano nerd when I was young.
Right.
But just instilling the discipline, to have to practice 45 minutes in the morning before school, and then, an hour at night, every night. So she, instilled in me the discipline, which then, can help you as you begin your coaching career. So that mentor was with me for, 3rd grade and 9th grade, 9 years. And so it doesn't always have to be a basketball person. And then my basketball mentors, came later as I was, 25, 26 years old. But
yeah, I mean,
how do you find them is different. It's different for everybody.
I agree with that. I mean, I think with so many young coaches that really don't know anything about anything except they've been around the game, they watch, and they probably go online and get stuff, YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. And I think it's important not only to go through it and make mistakes and, coach high school or be a trainer or however you're doing it, but like have a mentor that actually teaches you the ropes of what's right, what's wrong. You're going to mess up. But I think it's always important to have those people in your corner to be able to bounce things off of. I think it's a really important, I think it's the important part of the journey of coaching, to have those people. And, you and I had some really good ones, but I mean, you don't have to have like these great coaches, or like you said, they don't even have to be basketball, but I think you definitely need some direction as far as, how to be a professional. Like if I was coach, like how to be a professional, how to be on time, how to set up a scouting report, how to set up an offense, X's and O's, player development, practice planning, and have somebody that's been through it and could sort of show you the way through. Yeah, I made, that made the same mistakes you're going to make and that you've already made, and to be able to get you through the night. I don't think there are enough of them. I don't think there are enough people that are mentored or want to be mentored, and I think that's a big problem with coaching.
And I think one of the most important things that they can do for a young coach is give them some direction on jobs, job opportunities, and really help you look at the pros and cons of taking a certain job or applying for a certain job. You know, forget the X's and O's and all that stuff, which is really important. But I've found that the mentors that I've had, I've really utilized them the most when it comes to making a decision on whether or not to take a job or to apply for a job. I remember when I was offered the Bulls job, and it just so happened we were in Southern California doing the Paul Pierce Nike thing, and my wife happened to be with me those 3 or 4 days, and Tate was with us, and he sat me and Julie down, and he just kind of gave us some advice on the pros and the cons of making that big jump, because for me it was a big jump. So I think mentors can really help you when it comes time to decide on a job, a career changing job.
Right. And in shifting gears to the other side of that, so many head coaches that I've spoken to don't either know where to begin when it comes to mentorship, or they feel as though, well, I gave coaches an opportunity to work for me. That should be mentorship enough, and they should be able to pick up things. And I think that's where I think a head coach or a seasoned assistant that has younger assistants on the staff, or even a head coach that's young and inexperienced, to be able to sort of have a program in place of how to mentor them. And and I don't think that a lot of head coaches really know how to mentor. I think that they just say, well, this is how I was mentored. I was just thrown into it and no one helped me. And I think that's the same way that, it's sort of like raising kids, right? You raise them most likely how you were raised. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it, where you're just throwing them to the wolves to experience all this. Yes, it does help to a certain degree, but I think taking the time to sort of, to walk them through what's going to make them a serviceable coach is an important deal, on and off the court,
Right. No, one of the things that we see, and not just in basketball, but my wife's in the education field, and so many times we talk about, we elevate people to a position of leadership or of authority, and who then kind of, like you said, get thrown to the wolves, and there's really nothing that happens during, especially during the first few months of their job, where there's no mentoring going on. They just kind of throw them to the wolves, and then when they're not successful, the people from higher up say, well, what did you do to help this person?
Right.
And a lot of times the answer is nothing. I just, figured they had the job. They knew what they were doing.
Right.
And then, they come down to, well, a lot of times, Sweet Chuck, the person, we've talked about this before, the people aren't ready.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've seen it happen so many times at coaches that they're really probably not ready for that head coaching job, but they get it anyway. And then there's no support or mentoring to help them, and they fail. And then the administration says, well, why'd they fail? Well, maybe you didn't do enough to support them or mentor them and give them the help that they needed.
Yeah. I think it just starts with, it depends on where they are as a coach. If they're really young, if they're maybe they've had a few stops and they really haven't developed that one skill that's going to help them as a coach. But like, if I'm a head coach, and I've spoken to this head coach that was really good at offense and breaking down film, and he's like, well, how can I help my assistants more? And I was like, well, first of all, like, you can get into a city if you're traveling on the road, like, and you have this time, because at home sometimes you don't have the time. But on the road, where you don't have anything to do, I said, why don't you just bring them up to your hotel, sit them next to you, and watch film like you watch, and talk to them about what you're seeing. And you could start there. Like,
Right.
this way they could have a notebook with them. You could stop the film, say, this is what I see. What do you see? And, look, they're not gonna carbon copy you, because sometimes maybe it's just not a good fit. But like, I think you should start for what you're good at. And you don't have to mentor them in everything if you're not good at everything. But like, I think you should start with the one thing that you're really good at, and that's your skill, and be able to spend time with them. And I think you have to give them time and be like, look, this is what I see, because this is what your skill is. And what do you see? And you could sort of talk about it, and try to get into their head, and they could try to get into yours, and then try to mentor them along. And, look, it's not going to be one session. It's going to be, a few times a week, and then go from there. Some people learn by just being a sponge and just being around you in meetings and practice and get better. But I really think that to be a good mentor, you need to spend the time, and you need to sort of start a foundation for whatever you're trying to build with them.
Yeah, there's no question. And the key thing you said there is time. If you want to be mentored, or if you want to mentor somebody, you've got to invest time in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that could be in a multitude of ways. Like you said, it could be watching film. It could be, watching a practice together, just talking. But you got to be able to spend time with that person and invest in them, and able to, make it work. And, another thing, I was thinking about mentors, and sometimes, like I mentioned my piano teacher, but a lot of times mentors could be somebody who, maybe a faith leader, whatever your religion is, or your faith, that could be a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a young high school coach, maybe it's the athletic director. I remember when I first got my very first varsity coaching job, and it was a tough year. And my mentor that year was the athletic director, the guy that hired me. And
Right.
we had a really tough year. And if it wasn't for him to kind of help me navigate through that year, I would have went nuts. So sometimes it's somebody that's not involved with your coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I have been really fortunate, and some of those mentors, one of those mentors, it has to be what I call your 3 a.m. guy.
Yeah.
And me and you talked about that, and people say, well, what do you mean? Well, when it's 3 a.m. and the stuff's really bad and it's hitting the fan, and you're losing games, or you got these major problems in your team or whatever, who's the guy that you can call them any time of the day, and they'll talk to you. I just call them 3 a.m. guys. And so I think you have to have one of those in your life, especially as a coach. You know how we are. I mean,
yes. And I think a lot of the people that you have to talk to are experienced in whatever field they're in, and they're mild-mannered, and they're pretty consistent with their approach to things, where they're not going to fly off the handle. They're going to give you good advice. They're not going to get sucked into, just telling you what you want to hear. I think they need to be able to, process your situation and give you good advice, not just fly you off the handle. Because in a lot of ways, we use our mentors to calm us down. And, they need to be a calming influence, not someone who's just going to throw gasoline on the fire that's already started. A lot of times, I think they need to sort of bring you back to being centered, and sort of, give them all the facts, and then they process it and give you what they think that, will get you back in the right groove or right direction.
And they have to, and most of the really good ones listen with the intent to understand, instead of with the intent to, change your mind or form an opinion.
Right.
They just listen with the intent to understand where it is you're coming from, and start from there. So, and you and I are in a kind of a unique position, because we still have mentors in our life, in this basketball world, but we also have young coaches that we kind of mentor.
Yeah.
So, we're kind of in the middle. We do both sides of it, because you and I both all the time have young coaches calling us up or talking to us, asking us about certain situations and for advice and stuff.
Right.
And then there's times where we need to call our guys, you know,
I
to
think
check in with them and get advice and so forth.
I agree. And, you know, as a young coach, like just say most coaches are like, they played in high school. Okay. And they say they become while they're in college or after they've done playing in college, they become coaches. I think that most of us at the age of 22, 23 aren't really all that mature, you know, in our sort of
Oh,
day to day, right?
I was a straight knucklehead.
Yeah, no doubt. So I
We
think
didn't know who we were.
no, I'm still at 45, um, but like I think the mentors that you have in your life should teach you how to be professional. You know, like, you know, how to act, especially, you know, at a young age in what's right and what's accepted. And first of all, how to be professional. And if we're talking about just like the basketball part of it, like how to be professional, how to be on time, how to be prepared, how to set things up, how to be organized, you know, and then it's, you know, how do you speak to players? How do you deal with players? What's your, you know, and I guess when you're young, you're trying to do a million things in coaching. So trying to put them in the right direction. Like I said, like set up a practice plan, set up a scouting report. Here's offenses. Here's how to break down film. And there's so much, and there's so much time that you need to invest in it. But like, I think that you need to, like, as a young coach, try to get direction of how to be professional, how to be prepared, and then try to learn some tricks of the trade of, is it going to be offense? Is it going to be defense? Is it going to be individual development? Is it going to be scouting? Like whatever you're going to start your path in, and then go from there. But I think without a solid foundation, you know, unless you're really lucky, it's going to be hard for you to progress. And I think the hardest thing for young coaches, I think, Seb, is to shut up, you know, and listen. I think that's the
Yeah.
hardest part for young coaches. And you know, you got to shut up and listen. And because I think, especially if you have a coach, you know, that you're working for that can really teach you something. Like, I think you need to, like the first couple of years, it just needs to be mostly listening and then trying to do a little bit. But I think to get that foundation, the first couple of years, you gotta listen.
Yeah, there's no question. You know, and I'm one of my mentors. I remember when I was a young coach, I was only around him for 1 week, pretty much out of the whole year, and then I'd see him 2 or 3 times during the year briefly. But for that 1 week of the year that I was around him, for the first 2 years I never said a word. First of all, I was scared of him. He was
Right.
intimidating.
Right.
But, you know, I never said anything to him except for hi, coach, and thank you for having me, coach, at the end.
Right.
But in between, I would just listen and take notes and watch and learn and see how this certain coach, you know, interacted with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think you know who I'm talking about, but you know, listening is such a huge skill for young coaches. And listen with the intent to understand and not to really form opinions quite yet.
Right. Yeah. Look, you're not going to carbon copy your mentors and copy them 100%.
No.
Like, you got to take from them what you think is important. But yeah,
Right.
the listening part, you know, I remember the listening part was so big for me, and being able just to see and to pay attention, take notes. And then if I got questions, I asked. But I think young people need to take that step in asking somebody, look, I need a little help. Can you help me along the way here? And I think trying to, you know, be around that person, be a fly on the wall, you know, not talk a lot, like we talked about, just listen. And then when you have questions, you ask them, and then you start formulating this foundation. And I think that then you could start learning the tricky plays or whatever you're going to get into. But I think without a solid foundation in learning from somebody, and the biggest thing is, look, you've already made those mistakes. That mentor has already made those mistakes that you're about to make. They've already dealt with their development. And if they were self-aware, they could chronicle that and talk to you about some of the struggles that they had. And maybe they're different because culturally, or not culturally, but like time, like, you know, I grew up coaching in the 90s. So like if I'm mentoring a coach, it's, you know, trying to be mentored in 2020, the business has changed. The game has changed a little bit. So yeah, you're going to have to sort of, talk them through some of the things that you didn't have to go through or where they're going through. But I think the foundation is always the same: being professional, being organized, developing a skill, just like a basketball player would if you're developing a basketball player. But I think having mentors are really important for all these reasons that we're talking about.
Yeah,
You're talking about a lot of off court. I'm talking about a lot of on court in the profession, and having those people are so important to be able to talk to.
And if you're a young coach, if you're able to have two,
Yeah,
maybe three, you're really lucky. I mean, and you don't need 5 or 10.
yeah,
If you can have 2 or 3 that are really solid, and you gotta understand that the good ones, the good mentors for young coaches, are going to tell you the truth, and sometimes you're not going to like it.
mm-hmm.
They're the good ones. They're not just going to tell you what you want to hear all the time.
No, and that's important.
They're going to keep it real, and sometimes I've gone to my guys, when I was younger coach, and they told me stuff that I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like hearing it. It was the truth, but I didn't like it. So now, what are you going to do? You're gonna be pissed off at them, or are you going to heed their advice and really try to make changes?
I remember, Sev, there was a NBA Summer League in Boston back in like '99, and I'm a character, as you know. I cuss too much, and I act crazy, especially back then, and I'm a little more reserved now, believe it or not. But I remember this. 2 of my mentors at the time were Frank Catapano, who's an agent, longtime basketball agent, represented tons of players. And there was Frank Martin, who's at South Carolina now, who's an assistant at Northeastern at the time. And Frank and I were inseparable. And they took me in between these sessions, and they took me in another room, and I didn't know what was happening. And they came down and they motherfucked me for about 45 minutes about how I'm crazy, unprofessional. I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get excommunicated from the business. And I didn't think I was that bad. And I hated it. I was heated, and I didn't say anything. I just sort of took it. I was red as a tomato when I was walking out of there. And, but reflecting back, it was important because I was heading down a path probably I didn't want to head down, and I didn't even know I was heading down it. And I didn't ask for help. Those guys just took it upon themselves to bring me in a room and talk to me, and I had no idea that we were heading that way. I was heading that way. So, like you said, sometimes your mentors tell you things that you don't want to hear, and that was important for me. Sort of centered me back on track. I still acted crazy, but I was sort of a little bit more self-aware of what I was saying when I was saying. Aware, right. Yeah. So, but and that's just that's just sort of it. That's how mentors take you. Herb Livesey, we talk about all the time. Like, Herb would take me and we would work Nike All-American Camp, and believe me, we'll do another session just on Nike Camp.
That's a whole nother episode.
No question. But every year at Nike Camp, I know I was going to do a couple of things at Nike Camp. I knew that I was going to talk to him for an hour one time, either at a meal or whatnot, about workouts, footwork, shooting. I would get my dose of Herb, and he was one of my biggest mentors ever. And then I knew you and I were going to talk about 3 or 4 moves that we picked up throughout the year. And we would talk about it on the court, whatever, before we started sessions and while they were stretching, and the college players were stretching. And those were mentorship things to me, where we didn't really have internet that back then, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, texting. So that one time a year I know I was going to get a few hours of sit down time with mentors that were going to sort of teach me more. And like I said, I was 25 at the time. So it was huge for me. And that's how mentorships work. I think that you spend time, and hopefully you could have mentors that are close in proximity to you, where you could spend a couple hours a week with them. Sometimes you can't, but I think that was beneficial to me, to be able to spend time with you guys and learn more things and just bounce things off of each other.
No question. And for hopefully, there's some coaches out there that'll listen to this. There's 3 books, and we're not out here to push anybody's book or anything like that. But there are 3 books that I think, if they get a chance to read them, that are pretty good. And the first one's called "Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go." It's a pretty good book on mentorship. It's written by 2 gals, actually. One's named Bev Kay, and the other one's Julie Giulioni.
Okay.
The second book is called "The Soul of a Team," by Tony Dungy, the football coach.
I heard about that book.
Yeah, it's really good. I would recommend that for a minute. And the last one is called "We Gear." It's written by a guy named Lance Loya. He used to be a Division III coach in Pennsylvania.
What team?
Mount Aloysius College in Pennsylvania. It's a Division III school. And he was a former college coach who's now this kind of this guru on mentorship. And so his book is called "We Gear." So those are 3 books. But I think the biggest thing is we don't know how they're going to come into your life. Mm-hmm. Like I said, my first one came in, I was 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. And I still have, here as old as I am, I still have mentors in my life that are in their 80s.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be somebody older than you. It could be somebody younger than you. Like you're younger than me, but I would still consider you my 3 a.m. guy. If I
because I'm up at 3 a.m. So
yeah, because you're always up. Yeah, you don't go to sleep at 5.
Mm-mm. No.
So really, age doesn't really matter. It usually is an older person, but it doesn't have to be. And it doesn't have to be, in the basketball world. It probably is going to be, but it doesn't always have to be.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But
it's so important. Young coaches. If my advice, if you don't have one, you got to find one. Well, how do I find one, Coach? I don't know. That's on you. But really, it helps you mentally more than anything. And
without question.
Some direction.
Yeah, without question. Like, even players, like when we were at Grover's, talking to Michael Finley and Juwan Howard all the time.
Oh, yeah. Great.
About how to talk to players, how to, situations that they see. And those guys were younger than me, but they knew so much more about the game than I did. And being able to talk to those guys and get mentorship from them about how to deal with certain situations. Talking to Tim Grover about how he dealt with MJ and players like that were high levels. And I'll tell you what, dealing with Tim all the time and talking to him was really helpful. How I dealt with Kobe working for KB, because he dealt with MJ and just talking to Tim about asking him advice on things, and then getting info from Kobe about how to deal with players at his stature. So now, there are the main mentors that you have, but then you have these other people that come in your life that could help you on certain other subjects that could help you going forward. And it's funny how those people pop in your life.
Yeah, you never know when they're gonna show up.
No, you definitely don't. Be honest. How many of those books did your wife tell you about out of those 3?
None.
I
swear, none. Her area of expertise is leadership. Yeah. Leadership development for educators. So I can swear, none of them. These are all books that I just kind of on my own found and saw and went through. So I'll be honest, there was none.
Had to give it the benefit of the doubt.
But if it doesn't have, like, if the author's name doesn't have PhD next to him, she doesn't mess with it.
And I think another thing, Sev, is it's important that, like, you be self-aware as a head coach, as an older coach, or just an older coach, more experienced coach, that you need to give back. And a lot of coaches don't even know that they don't mentor. Like that they're really good, they're really established, everyone thinks they're a really good coach, and they are, but they don't know how to mentor. Maybe they weren't mentored. And that's usually how it works. Like, people that say, well, I don't need a mentor, I don't mentor, usually didn't have one in their life. And the people that had good ones, they want to sort of emulate them. So they're looking for people to try to help. And I think you should spend time with your assistants, especially the younger ones, and show them the ropes, because you might be a really established coach that got a career quickly. Like they didn't have to like grind it up like a lot of these other coaches have to do it. Like Rick Pitino became a head coach at like 20, whatever, like 26. It's hard for him, I think, in my opinion, to teach somebody how to grind it out like 10, 12, 13 years before they get a head job. You know, it's sort of like an NBA max player that was a number one pick trying to teach a guy that's like 14th man in the NBA how to stick in the NBA. It's like sometimes it's not going to come that easy. So, but teaching them, taking the time as an experienced coach with the younger people on your staff and spending an hour a week with them, texting them maybe, or emailing them, even if you can't spend that time, but come on, we all have time. But sure. Yeah, but spending that time, because I believe about 80% of head coaches don't mentor. They're good examples if other people are paying attention to them, but they don't like take the time to put their arm around them. Like, look, we're going to do this. I want to mentor you. I want to check your work. I want to talk to you about things, correct you. I want to put you on the right path and spend time with you. I don't think there are enough of those. And I think that the younger coaches and your staff are missing out because.
Yeah. I've found that if you reach out to the older guys, for the most part, they're going to be pretty receptive to wanting to help you for the most part. I remember my first couple of years with the Bulls, and we had two older assistants, longtime NBA guys, Del Harris and Bernie Bickerstaff. And every time I would go into their office and just want to talk about something, hoops or something, they were more than willing to sit down and talk with you. So I think for the most part, you're going to find out that the older guys are pretty receptive. Like if a guy comes to me, calls me, texts me, emails, and wants to talk about whatever, I'm willing, and you're willing. Yeah. I think most people are, but you're going to find, like you said, those head coaches that just because maybe they weren't mentored coming up, that they have a hard time reaching out, and to assistants and helping them, and like you said, checking their work and talking to them and stuff.
Yeah, so say if you're a head coach and you finally notice that, like, yeah, I did some inventory and like, yeah, I really don't spend time with guys. So if I were you, and so say you're an NBA head coach and you're not a good mentor. Look, you've been all through the NBA right now. Of course, it's different with COVID, but they get in their office at like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, whenever they get in the office, and they're doing like not nothing, but they're like at their office. So why not like call a young assistant in for 30 minutes and watch film with them, and not just dictate to them, but talk to them, say, oh, okay, this is what I see on this play, and this is why, this is what I would probably change, and this is why. What do you see? And then just have this little back and forth for like 30 minutes every third day or whatever, or a couple of times a week. And it's hard because there's a lot of assistants on your staff and things, but spending the time. And then as an assistant, go ahead.
That's when you bring in, say you bring in 2 or 3 at a time, the young ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Like at Dallas, we had the internship program. So we had 12 interns, and there were a lot. And it was the largest player development program in the NBA for interns. And what I wanted to turn that into is an ability to take 12 young coaches and mentor them through only the player development side, because that's the only thing that I have expertise in, and talking to them about presence, talking to them about how drills are irrelevant, and teaching them about eye contact, teaching them about being simple, teaching them about how to watch film, how to evaluate film, and then talk to them about, talking to them about the things that we go through during the season, players struggling. So how do you approach a player that's struggling? How do you approach a player that's, mad about playing time and role, or, sometimes telling a player they're not working out that day. Like every day, well, not every day, but like every few days was a lesson in talking and, spending a few minutes a day just talking to the group about those things. And I think that the mentorship's important. Being around an NBA team or a college team's cool. Don't get me wrong, especially at a high major or an NBA level. But like what you get out of it, the experience you get out of it, in what you can learn from it is important if you take advantage of that opportunity. You're not just being there with Jerry Westsock. You and I talk about all the time. People just want those Jerry Westsocks, man, and they don't care about anything else. They just see those things,
Yeah.
and it really hurts. But as a young coach, you have to take advantage of every opportunity if you have an older coach, an experienced coach that's been through it, to learn from them. And you're giving up an opportunity. We talk about head coaches that don't take that step in trying to help young people. Well, I speak to so many young video guys that are afraid to approach their head coach. Like I said, video guys are there at 6 a.m., 6:30. If you have a head coach that gets in there and you know they're not doing a lot in their first 60 to 90 minutes in their office, knock on the door. Maybe you give them a project that you did out of the blue. Maybe you ask, say, Coach, what's your opinion on this? And maybe they're into it, maybe they're not, but you need to sort of take that step to ask to be mentored too. You just can't sit back and let it happen where you're not,
Well, I think we covered the whole gamut.
I think we did, Sev. I think we solved one. We got one less problem in the world right now.
Where's your 2323 clock?
I sold it, actually.
Oh.
I sold it. Yeah. I'm going back to a flip phone like The Wire season 1.
Well, I see you got some kind of gadget in the background there, a new gadget over your
Oh yeah,
shoulder.
it's like this one. It's an LED light. Because I'm not ugly enough as it is. I need to be more publicized.
All right, sweet.
All right, Sev. Enjoy yourself off Fresno, my man.
Yeah, it's only 110 today. So until next time.